Hello everyone, this is the Punisher Mythos and welcome. In this edition, I will do my first ever comic review, and thanks to Ronald Neal and Zachary Chapman, they responded to one of my shorts pertaining to comic reviews and gave me suggestions on which comic runs that I should start with. To be fair, Ronald Neal was first, so I will start with the Punisher War Journal series. In these comic reviews, I will follow a simple formula, which is to start with the credits, then go over the plot, the story, the art, and lastly, the verdict. So without further ado, let's get the review started. The Punisher War Journal number 1, titled An Eye for an Eye, Sunday in the Park, has several talented individuals involved. The writer and penciler is Carl Potts. The colorist is John Willington, the inker is named Jim Lee, the letterer is Jim Novak, and the editor's name is Don Daly. The original price of this issue was $1.50, and the cover date was in the month of November in the year 1988. Now, when it comes to the plot, we are introduced to a yearly yet bittersweet tradition of Frank's, which is to go to Central Park and fly a kite, which is unfortunately the last experience him and his family had together. There must have been some emotional transference because he ends up saving a family from a mob hit. He ends up running across the main antagonist, Mark Scotty, thus freeing the family from imminent danger. Frank Castle is then able to commence his yearly tradition dedicated to his family, and at this point, Frank seems to be at peace. Unfortunately, during these events, the audience is introduced to an ex-mobster, Hector Montoya, who will soon reap the reward of early release due to good behavior. I wonder how much of a threat that he could be for Frank in the future. As I mentioned earlier, the story starts with a bang as the Punisher and Microchip are testing out the Kevlar armor by firing a new 9mm. However, Frank had to test it in the most hardcore way. On himself. Microchip asks Frank, "Why do you insist on punishing yourself?" And Frank is quite adamant about this method because it would allow him to assess the level of incapacitation. Frank then becomes inquisitive about the mysterious deaths that has been happening and asks Microchip to investigate as he steps out on a solo mission. It then transitions to him in New York traffic, and through narration, the readers become aware that Frank is on a tight schedule and the congested traffic is only making things worse. The story instantly becomes more intense as he violently turns off the road. And to beat traffic, he goes an alternate route on his bike. He then heads to a safe house on the west side, arriving at 11:20, and the readers are aware that he only has 40 minutes left to get to his destination. He purchases some food and a beverage, specifically a turkey sandwich and a cola, and tries to rush out the store only to temporarily be held up by an old man, hence blocking his progress. The old man lets him go, but obviously with a few words with substance that has Frank put into introspection what his true mission is. We then realize that the old man and the cashier are hiding their true nature, and it seems that we will soon see the true nature unfurl later down the line. Besides that, fans are treated with the popular name drop of Mr. Murdock, who we know is Daredevil. We then see Frank finally make it to Central Park, and then Frank's attention is diverted to a family being herded by some mobsters. It is now 11:35, and Frank sizes up the mobsters and even thinks about calling 911. However, he knows the protocol, thus he steps in because he knows the police wouldn't be there in time to save the family. He approaches a vehicle to better assess the situation. He sees that the woman is terrified by the mobsters, and he has to come up with a way to impede what looks like to be a potential hit. He asks the driver if he knows what time it is. The driver replies belligerently, which is exactly what Frank needed to fuel his punishment for the day. He then snatches the glasses off the driver's face, and one of the mobsters knew what Frank was doing. However, it was too late for the driver. Frank then takes advantage of the driver's ignorance and literally punishes him for it by striking his face with his elbow. He then disarms the other mobster and pistol whips him, knocking him out, and then returns to the other guy who tries to pull out a pistol as well, and he kicks him right in the face, knocking him out as well. Frank then gets in the car and is about to drive them somewhere safe, and the man in the backseat tells Frank to take them into the park. Frank then pulls into an alley to avoid detection, and this is where Frank asks them who they are and how did they get into this dangerous situation. At first, the woman was nervous, however, through Frank's persistence, she spits out that she had to choose between Steven, who is currently in the car, and a man named Mark Scotti. Mark's double life has surfaced, thus, she learned that he was a mobster while pregnant. Steven offered to save her and her child, however, they got caught by Mark's men and was going to get killed before Frank saved them. As Frank is hearing more of the story, he then realizes that it is 11:55, and he battles with leaving them with the vehicle so they could possibly escape, or if he should handle the situation himself to save the family. He chooses the latter and brings the family to the Westside safe house and directs them to wait until he comes back. Also, on a side note, we see Matt Murdock walking with the old man from the store. We then go back in time about a week ago, and the readers are introduced to a prisoner named Hector Montoya. We realize that he has a tendency to send out a lot of letters. I wonder why. The prisoners and the readers then find out that Montoya is getting out of jail due to good behavior, and the prisoners do not like that at all.
I don't like that shit.
They then begin to taunt and try their hardest to get Montoya to retaliate. However, Montoya just focuses on what's important, his family, hence, he's impervious to their shenanigans. The biggest out of the two becomes so enraged that he attempted to induce physical harm to Montoya. However, the correctional officer intercepted and neutralized the threats and returned the Walkman to Montoya. We are now back in present time where we see Frank calling Microchip to see if the woman's story is true. He finds out that the woman's story checks out, and he then gets the location of Mark Scotti to finish the mission. He is confident that he can handle the potential security and hired hands, despite not stocking up the safe house. Unfortunately for Mark Scotti, it's 12:40, and Frank is highly vexed because Scotty's wife made him late. Instead of coming from an inconceivable angle, he chooses to be direct in his approach. Somewhat. He is spotted by one of Scotty's henchmen named Mario. Mario responds accordingly, however, Frank seems to disappear. Frank swiftly pops out from the bushes and executes a sidekick right to Mario's face. The door is then closed by another one of Scotty's henchmen, so Frank throws a sting ball riot grenade through the door's mail slot. The grenade explodes, and then in Punisher fashion, Frank shoots the doorknob and kicks in the door. He then approaches another one of Scotty's henchmen, executes some good old joint manipulation to get the guy to share the exact location of Scotty. At this point, Frank leaves and the Punisher emerges. Frank catches Scotty in the tub and then forces him to take a lie detector test. And when it came to him promising to quit the rackets and go legit,
the lie detector determined that was a lie.
Another one of Scotty's henchmen interrupts the testing session, and Punisher lets off enough rounds to kill the assailant. However, the clip is now empty. He then sees Scotty reaching for his pistol, and then he disarms Scotty, and he knocks the radio in the bathtub and kills him. As Frank says, mixing electricity and water is bad for your health. He recovers the other child and takes some cash from Scotty's safe. Frank then returns to the safe house and gives the family $30,000 and instructs them to use $25,000 to take care of the child. He continues to give further instruction by telling them to use the rest of the money to get out of town, or else. He then purchases another kite, and now Frank can continue his day, flying a kite, eating his turkey sandwich, and be at peace conducting his own unique solemn ceremony of commemoration to his family. Now when it comes to art, Jim Lee really showed out. It does a great job with the onomatopoeia usage, and there was obviously a lot of action sequences. Jim Lee is excellent with his penciling and the way that he sets up all the scenes. John Wellington also did an exceptional job with the colors. Thanks to Lee and Wellington, the story was brought to life and it had me at the edge of my seat. This is also due to how they organized the panels. Everything was easy to follow and understand. This is extremely important when reading comics because there were numerous comics that lost my attention due to what seems to be minuscule, which is the size and organization of the panels. I would also like to add that at the bottom of the pages you can see Frank's family being killed by the mob. John Wellington, as I mentioned earlier, did so well with the coloring and even more so with the last panel on each page. There's some type of discoloration to the bottom panels to somewhat take life away from the photos. This had to be done on purpose to show how the family, as well as Frank Castle, even though he is physically present, died that day. Thus, the Punisher is born. I also appreciate how they convey the Punisher's hand-to-hand skills and his unconventional methods to neutralize threats because the Punisher is commonly known to just handle things with guns and explosives. I'm not gonna lie, I'm genuinely excited to read and review the next edition, especially because Daredevil is going to show up. Also, there's going to be a big battle between Hector Montoya and the other villains in the editions to come. The Punisher War Journal, even though it's the first edition, really captured my attention from start to finish. It literally started with the bang at the expense of Frank, nonetheless, but even after that, it was filled with action and the story had a great ending, and I personally think that he quenched some of his thirst for vengeance. A job well done. I would like to add that I enjoyed some of the cameo appearances from Matt Murdock, which we know as the Daredevil, and even the Shadow Masters, Rikishi and Yuriko Izaki, who on the surface present themselves to be innocent and innocuous storm owners. I'm curious to see the battle between Frank and Montoya as well as Daredevil because die-hard fans know about the love-hate relationship that Murdock and Castle has. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed my first comic review. And remember guys, put your thoughts in the comment section, punish that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. The Punisher Mythos is over and out.